The raid will be simultaneously released again. You did that for the first time in Season 1. Did you like it so much that you decided to do it again, or was there a different reasoning for it? Oh, in development, looking ahead to Embers of Niltharion. Yeah. Okay, let's just slam down this one by one. This works. This works. So now we're at the Season 2 thing, which is New Zone, which is Zarelek Cavern. You know, I don't know exactly. Maybe they'll elaborate on that, but just imagine some kind of like, you know, Korthia, new patch, new island kind of thing. Throne of Thunder, the Isle of Thunder, the Timeless Isle, that kind of stuff. New raid, Aberrus, the Shadowed Crucible. So usually with raids, we have nicknames or what we call them. I think people, what do people call this raid? They just call it Vault. They just literally just call it Vault. VOTI, bro, I've never heard a goddamn person be like, yo, Max, can you help us out in VOTI later? No way. I've never heard that. It's just Vault. And then Sepulchre was Sepi C. Sanctum was Sankey D. Castle Nathri was just Castle Nathri. That didn't have one. Aberrusi. That's that is pretty fucking stupid. We could call it that for sure. Shady C. The Shadowed Aberrus, the Shadowed Crucible, which is ASC. I don't know. We'll workshop it. Fire-Rack Assaults, don't know what that means. New Renown, cool. New PvP season, new Mythic Plus Dungeon Pool, new Dragon Riding Drake, user interface improvements. So the new zone, gather your courage as you enter into the new zone as you explore, undertake new quests, meet intriguing new denizens, and experience the Dragon Riding updates. Players will also encounter new rare and elite creatures and claim new treasures. And then here are some pictures of that. Okay, so here's part of the zone. Here's part of the zone. Okay, wait, this zone looks pretty massive, right? Because like these are 4 pictures of 4 distinctly different areas. I wonder how big of a zone they're looking to make. Maybe because I have Korthia in my head, but maybe now that dragon riding is a thing, obviously the expansion zones were really, really good this time around. Like actually underrated good. I feel like it hasn't been appreciated how good the zones are in Dragon Lands or whatever, Dragon Isles. So I guess they're making their new zone like turbo big because you can dragon ride in it. They said it's larger than Zareth Mortis. Yeah, and Zareth Mortis had a bunch of ports to take you around everywhere real quick. So this is a new patch zone with dragon riding in mind. New raid dungeon, Aberrus, the Shadowed Crucible. Breach Neltharion's secret lab hidden within Zarelek Cavern. It is here that he created the Drakthir and ultimately succumbed to the whispers of the old gods and their corruption. That was probably the shit we were just looking at on in that video. That's where they broke into. Players will face 9 new raid bosses in an effort to thwart the Incarnates, as well as Scale Commander Sarkareth, whose forces seem to claim the legacy of the Drakthir. Okay, so you're going to face 9 new raid bosses in an effort to thwart the Incarnates. So the Incarnates are who we just saw. Who the fuck is Scale Commander Sarkareth? Sarkareth was this guy? Ooh, okay, so maybe they are making the Incarnates the big bad here, and we're fighting them later. I really doubt we're gonna fight the Incarnates in this raid, because if we know, if they're mentioning Scale Commander Sarkareth, I feel like he'll be the last boss. If they're mentioning him by name, the alternative is the Incarnates are the last boss, which is a 3-boss council last fight, which would be super different. But who knows? All right, let's look at the raid. So this is the entrance, pretty baller. Okay, just dropped my phone. Love that. Sorry, Lily. She doesn't like loud noises. Here is maybe a trash room, maybe a boss room. Okay, so there's a little 3-headed doggy boss. That's cool. I like that. Similar to the, yeah, like Guarm. God, Guarm is one of the most underrated raid bosses ever. In fact, I think Trial of Valor, like that raid, is just underrated in the history of WoW raids. I think that entire raid slapped. I think Guarm was amazing. I think Odin was amazing. And I think Helya is at least a top 10 end boss ever. Just really, really good raid. Anyway, random segue. Okay. And then we have Crazy Armor Dargon. Okay. I'm assuming these are like mid-tier E bosses. I doubt they're much more than that. All right. Dragonflight Season 2 Mythic Plus. Dragonflight Season 2 adds the remaining Dragonflight dungeons along with additional dungeons from previous expansions to the Mythic Plus rotation, including, obviously, the 4 Dragonflights. We were wondering if Blizzard was going to bring back BFA dungeons. We thought it might be too early. They're bringing back 2, and they're bringing back 2 of the very best dungeons in that patch. People are going to pog about Freehold. Freehold is my favorite dungeon of all time. It thematically works. You can pull bosses in a different order. The trash isn't trying to do too much. It's just an absolute fucking heater. Underrot is almost as good. Underrot fucking slaps. It is insane. I fucking love Underrot. Underrot has so many things in that dungeon that are cool. There are very different pulls you can do, and especially in the room before the second boss, you can pull more or less trash based on your ability to do AoE stops and kicks, and all of them result in timing the key, but it allows you to go fast. I fucking love Underrot. It's like probably a top 3 dungeon for me in BFA. If they were going to bring back any dungeon from that season outside of Freehold, I think there's multiple competitors, but I would actually choose Underrot as my second favorite. And for you all Ataldazar lovers, you Waycrest Manor enjoyers, Motherlode especially, those are going to get brought back at some point as well. But now we know 2 things from them bringing back Mythic Plus dungeons here. We know that BFA is not too recent for them to grab from, and I love that. All right, the next one is even more of a surprise. And this is something that I have been pushing every single time that I have talked about Mythic Plus dungeons being brought back. It's been asked in interviews, and they basically have said we will not bring anything back pre-mop because it graphically does not hold up to anything current. I think this is a fine conversation for classic BC and Wrath, especially because those are so outdated that a lot of those dungeons wouldn't even be good or would have to be completely remade. But Cataclysm, if you guys played back then, is actually the first time in this game that dungeons became really involved, really good, and really difficult. They nerfed them pretty quickly after they came out, but Cataclysm has insanely fucking good dungeons. There's multiple dungeons in Cataclysm that are top tier as fuck. Vortex Pinnacle is one of them. Actually, I would say Vortex Pinnacle is probably like 3rd or 4th in the Cataclysm dungeon set, but I love the fact that they're bringing back something from Cataclysm. I think you guys are going to love this dungeon. So I'm super, super happy they did that. And then they brought Neltharion's Lair. I think Neltharion's Lair, at the very best case scenario, in my opinion, is like the 5th best Legion dungeon. I think they brought it back because Neltharion is relevant to the story in the new, whatever the new zone is called, the new Dragon Zone. So I think this was like more of a lore pick. I think Neltharion's Lair is not going to be on the level of the other 3 they brought back, just straight up. But I think it'll still be better than all 3 of Brackenhide, Halls of Infusion, or Uldaman, which are all 3 going to be pretty dreadful Mythic Plus dungeons, just looking at it as they are now. However, I know I've heard some tidbits from interviews of people saying that they're obviously aware of this. I think it's pretty reasonable to assume that Blizzard spent way more time on Algathar and the 4 dungeons this season than they did those, because simply they were Mythic Plus dungeons 6 months before the other ones were. But I really, really hope that they spend a lot of time updating those dungeons. But even worst case scenario, they stay pretty brutal. I think Freehold, Underrot, and Vortex and Neltharis will carry the season. I will make the take that this dungeon season, if you look at quality dungeons, for me, the dungeons that I have more fun doing than any other dungeon, there are 3 of them. It is Ruby Life Pools, Halls of Valor, and Algathar Academy, notably. Like, I just have more fun in those keys than doing the other keys, for sure. I think there will be 4 dungeons next patch, at least, that are on that level, and those are the 4 that I just named. So I think, just in general, I'm just pretty excited for the season. Okay, and then new seasonal affixes are in development and are available for testing later as part of the PTR cycle. So this is true and not true. So they apparently have gotten rid of seasonal affixes, and we will have a big conversation about that later when we actually reach that point of the reaction thing, because I have a lot of takes about that. There's more to come as we enter the next phase of development. For Dragonflight, keep an eye on the official World of Warcraft news site for more details. Oh, by the way, random thing about Mythic Plus. You guys have heard or talked about that I was doing a community Mythic Plus tournament, and I was getting that approved by Blizzard. I just had a call with Blizzard today. I sent them some documentation earlier in the week. We kind of moved some things around. I talked to them about the 15-point thing as an idea. They were kind of down with it, and it seems like they are down. So we're going to have to jump through some hoops to get some things approved, but I think I'll be able to do the 10K prize pool plus the donation incentive, which should make it a pretty decent amount. The announcement for the date and stuff like that will be soon, but I need to get in contact with the teams and see how that'll work for you. Just randomly. I forgot to mention that because we were talking about this. Okay, so let's look at a few other places. Someone said that Skarzar did his post, so I think I'm a little familiar with what this is going to be about, because I know that we needed to talk about loot, because one thing that we haven't talked about right now is the rare loot system, because I know they kind of hit on it in one of the interviews. New developer insights, new upgrade system in Embers of Neltharion. In this developer insight, WoW Developer Chimes takes you deep into the new upgrade system. One of the features of Embers as a content update is that a new upgrade system will replace many of the various upgrade systems currently in place, such as Valor and Storm Gear. Oh, okay. With a single system that covers most of the game. This system will last for the duration of Season 2, and after that, we'll evaluate how well it's working and whether we want to keep it. Oh, shit. I did not know about this. I know about some other shit, and I don't know if it's going to be involved in this post, but this, I have never heard of this before. This is fucking brand new shit. Okay, this is kind of a little bit of a departure of what I wanted to look at today, but this is certainly as interesting as it gets, so I guess today will just be a fucking big old stream. The gnome-size version. The basics of this system are simple. You'll earn a new currency called Flight Stones from just about anything you do. Complete a world quest, kill a unique creature. Okay, you get it. You'll also get items called Shadow Flame Crests, which come in 4 varieties from different content difficulty levels. Okay, so just picture it. LFR, normal, heroic, and mythic. Those are the color of the crests, or whatever the 4 varieties of it. Let's just go with colors for now. And then they'll also just have relative levels based on the level of Mythic Plus Dungeon or PvP MMR you're playing at. That will give you the same thing. But just keeping it as simple to the raid difficulties with the 4 things will probably make it easy. You'll be able to upgrade almost any item in Season 2's max level gameplay ecosystem, whether it comes from a world quest or a mythic raid boss, by spending Flight Stones and Shadow Flame Crests. There are 3 categories of gear that are not part of this system. The first is crafted gear, which will be upgraded using recrafting, much to the same it's done now. Okay, so crafting stays the same. The other kind of gear that's not included in this is PvP at all. PvP gearing will continue to work as it did in Dragonflight Season 1. Okay, that doesn't affect me at all, and I don't have a take on how PvPers would feel about that. It's fine. The final kind of gear is not available for these upgrades is the very top end of gear. Anything that's at an item level comparable to a mythic raid isn't going to be upgradable. Okay, very interesting. So you want the very best gear to get into Hall of Fame for the new raid, you still need to earn gear from drops the same as you do now. The most important thing, so I don't know if this is going to affect us very much. Maybe it will at the beginning of the patch. The most important thing to keep in mind is everything here is optional. You don't ever need to upgrade gear with the system. You'll see a gear drop at the same rates. The system isn't meant to augment. This system is meant to augment and supplement your gearing journey, not replace it. Okay, but what is it actually replacing then? Or is it just additive? Because it says it's a new upgrade system that will replace many of the various upgrade systems currently in place. So it's just basically, for PvE, it's just a replacement for Valor, I guess? So instead of Valor, you're just going to get, let's just call it Valor. You're going to get different levels of Valor based on the content you're doing, and those... So this seems like Season 4, right? This seems very similar to Season 4's kill certain amount of raid bosses, heroic raid bosses, and you can upgrade a piece of gear you have to that eye level. Okay, it's like that, and then also imagine Valor also working to upgrade heroic raid gear to base mythic. Or something around there. Okay. The old gods are in the details. Wow, what a title. With a system this wide in scope, the details matter, so here they are. Flight Stones themselves are already stated obtained by just about everything you do in the game. There's no weekly cap, so if you're running low and want more... Oh, that's first of all. Let's just pog at that. That's good, but I'm glad there's no weekly cap, but if you could upgrade items to like 424 equivalent, for example, I think the no weekly cap would be like super degenerate. But I actually, because this is capped, it seems like at a base level of Mythic, I think there's no issue with this. So if you're running low and want more, you can always continue playing the game and get more. You'll be limited on how many you can hold, though the holding cap is relatively high and at roughly 5 times the cost of the most expensive upgrade, but since you can spend them freely and earn them freely, as long as you're using them to upgrade your gear, there's no practical limit to the number you can earn. The Shadow Flame Crest come in for... Wait, first of all, I only have one thing, and this is not a complaint, because I'm not going to be like, why the fuck is it capped? Like... You know, fuck. You know, why did you not uncap it? I actually don't know why things are by default uncapped. Is it a, like, server storage, like, technical limitation thing? Like, this, just to be clear, this is probably totally fucking fine. Like, there's no issue with this cap whatsoever. I just don't know why there isn't ever unlimited shit. It's probably just a storage thing. Like, I don't know. Or making it easier to understand, I guess. Shadow Flame Crest come in 4 varieties. Shadow Flame, the Whelplings, Drakes, Worms, and Aspects. If you're upgrading an item to an item level that corresponds to the equipment you get from Raid Finder, you'll need to spend 1 Whelplings. Upgrading an item compared to normal, you'll spend a Drakes. Okay, Heroic is exactly what we suspected. Mythic is Aspect. Similar to those levels of content in where you'll find the most crests and additional options for them in non-instance outdoor gameplay. Oh, okay, so basically the Heroic and Mythic one are only going to come from Heroic and Mythic Raid and Mythic plus Dungeon levels of that, like, tier. Like, for example, a plus 16 right now gives you a concentrated Primal Focus. I imagine that'll probably be roughly around the same key level where you will actually obtain the Aspect level Shadow Flame Crest, for sure. Maybe even a little lower. With additional options for Whelplings and Drake crests from just doing World Quests and shit. See, this is insane. The way I'm looking at this, especially if it's account-wide, would be really dope for, like, gearing up new characters. Like, I want to play my Ret right now, but I feel like it's just so far behind that I can't even, like, really play it outside of getting it boosts. But this would just fix that entirely, right? I would be able to have, like, a usable character, basically, which is a good point. Like, I don't think you should be able to instantly gear your alts. I don't think you should be able to just instantly gear your alts, but I just feel like everything in this game should be faster after you've done it the first time. You level on your main, your ult should be twice as fast as your main was, or should take half the time, right? They actually did a good job of that this expansion. If you go through 4 weeks to gear your character to 418 eye level, your ult should do it in 2 weeks or 1 week or whatever. I just feel like there's not really that same level of appreciation of taking the same amount of time. What really happens is you're just most likely to play the game less. So I just hope they do that as we keep reading. Upgrades cost Flight Stones and Shadowflame Crest. You're getting an upgrade that increases your character's power, but if you're upgrading an item that's lower than the highest item level you got in a slot, you'll get... Oh, wait, okay. But if you're upgrading an item that's lower than the highest item level you've got in its slot, you get a discount. We don't want you to feel penalized for upgrading the wrong item, and we want to encourage experimentation with various trinkets. And oh, that's a fucking awesome, awesome change. So if you already... Here's the deal. If you already... Let's say you have a 400 eye level trinket, or you have two 415 trinkets, but you get a new 400 eye level trinket, and you're like, damn, this thing looks fucking cool. I'm going to try it. Oh, a puzzle box? I don't know if it really works for my class very well, but it is. My mastery is good for me. I don't really have any 3-minute cooldowns, but let's just see how well I can burst with it. Okay, you upgrade that shit to 415. It's going to be heavily discounted because you already have a 415 eye level trinket. Yeah, that's sick. I doubt you'd ever use this with armor pieces, but with trinkets, this specifically is very cool. So if you already have a couple trinkets at 415, you get a new trinket at 402 and want to try it out, you'll be able to upgrade it without spending any Shadowflame Crest. Even better. You'll also only spend half the usual Flight Stone cost. Fuck yeah, that's good. Example, Vindicator Boros wants to upgrade... I get it. I don't need an example. The redundancy discount doesn't apply to the character that earns the upgrade either. When you upgrade any item, if any character... That redundancy discount doesn't apply to characters that earn the upgrade either. When you go to upgrade an item, if any character on your account has a higher item level for that slot, you'll get a 50% Flight Stone discount. You'll still need to collect the appropriate crest, obviously, but it'll be much cheaper to upgrade that gear. Overall, good. The jury's still out on whether you should also be able to give crests to your alts, but we'll just see what the acquisition rate is for that, because that sounds very much like concentrated primal focuses at the moment. But it also might be too far. But again, the idea of a discount makes sense, right? Rings, trinkets, and one-hand weapons. Since you get 2 slots, we'll track your second highest item to determine your discount on the upgrades. That makes sense. Main hands and offhands like shields, whatever. It'll help you catch up. Got it. How many upgrades exactly? Okay, item level 376. Items created at this level always have an upgrade level. Explorer, Adventurer, Veteran. Okay, so Adventurer goes to 4 out of 8. Wait, whoa. I see. So Explorer 1 through 8 goes up to 398. Adventurer goes from 389 to 411. Veteran goes from 402 to 424. Champion goes from 415 to 437. 415 should be the normal eye level drop rate of next raid. I'm like pretty sure that's usually how that works. Like base mythic is usually normal eye level start for next season. So Drake is going to be the normal token. Worms is going to be heroic. So heroic will be 428 base. Or sorry, not worms. Hero, whatever. Hero is the last upgrade and it upgrades from heroic to mythic. So hero 5 out of 5, it will be base mythic. And then you just can't upgrade above base mythic, which means that like just try to think of it in this patch. All your items above 415 are crafted from the raid or from your mythic plus weekly vault. That is still where you are going to get all of those higher eye level pieces. This is just to get things to the base level of mythic, but I actually think that's fucking awesome because that's actually a huge time sink to even get to that level, and a lot of characters for people aren't fun to play until they get to that level, and this just speeds up that process. And it's awesome that it gets you there on your alts much faster than currently. This is a fucking... So far, this makes a lot of sense. The logic is there. The implementation also seems good. This is really fucking good. Wow. This is a bigger post than I thought. Shadowflame Crest and you. Let's see if we need to read this. They stack... Okay, it's in your reagent bag. They stack very high. There's a weekly cap on how many you can earn. You'll only be able to get 10 crests of each kind per week. Okay, so the upgrade mat is uncapped, but the thing that you actually need to upgrade is capped. That is interesting. I guess only time will tell how many you actually need. Okay, this means you'll only be limited to 10 upgrades per week in each item level band. Okay, so 10 upgrades would mean going from... So, for example, if you wanted to go from normal eye level all the way to mythic, that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So, like, if you got a normal raid item, you could upgrade one normal raid item to mythic in 1 week. And you could only do that once a week. That seems reasonable because I'm assuming, 10 per token? Oh, it's each crest. I see. So if you wanted to upgrade, how many items could you upgrade from 415, which is normal, to Mythic, which is 441? So it would be 4 champion upgrades. You could get 2.5 items with the cap each week from normal to Mythic. That is fucking fat. That is not an issue at all. I doubt that cap will be a big issue at all. That's I mean, that's like 3 weeks into the patch. You could have realistically upgraded every single piece you have to Mythic base eye level. And it's not the only path to get those items either. And then for alts can get 5 then? Correct. Alts could get 5 because it would be at a 50% discount on these crests. Yes. That is correct. This cap is deliberately set higher than most players would earn. This is because the goal of this cap is to keep a levelish playing field for the most competitive players, clearing the most difficult content while still allowing the majority of players to play as much as they like and whatever level they prefer and get meaningful rewards appropriate to that level. Makes sense. Most systems are like that. The cap also increases over time, lets you catch up freely if you don't reach it in that week. Okay, that makes sense. We don't even need to read this. Just I assume something like if 10 is the cap week 1, 20 will be the cap week 2. And, like, if you didn't do any upgrades week 1, you could just go fucking hog wild in week 2, right? I imagine that makes sense. This cap is on this. This is going to be held in the reagent bag. Crafted gear will help you with... Oh, let's see. There's going to be held in the reagent bag, which we'll use to turn in this. Just like in Dragonflight Season 1's Primal Infusion and Concentrated Primal Infusion, as you might expect, your crafter skill will still be very relevant, as higher quality crafts will have higher item levels. Once crafted, instead of this, you'll use the existing recrafting system to upgrade your gear. Okay. So if you ever craft in that slot... you will upgrade it with that. Makes sense. Crafted gear will help you upgrading other things, as the upgrade vendors will see the crafted armor weapons, just the same as when determining upgrade costs. Here's what it looks like in practice. When you get a crest, you'll have 3 choices. You can upgrade an item, you can craft with it, or you can simply sell it to a vendor. At first, vendoring will probably not be the best option, but once all of your gear is above a certain eye level, you'll naturally outgrow that type of crest, for sure. For example, once you have all your gear there, you won't need the ones that upgrade it to lower than that. Flightstone's a fancy... Flightstone costs are based on the new upgrade level and upgrade type, and item type. Upgrading an item with more stats will cost more than one with less, of course. Upgrading weapons is generally more expensive than upgrading armor, yes, and upgrading an item becomes progressively more expensive as you climb an item level. Okay, Flightstones can be earned in small quantities as 2 from random treasures out in the world, all the way from a few hundred from the next weekly quest, as well as probably killing raid bosses. Yep, Mythic Keystone, I got it. Rather than getting to exact numbers, let's go over how many times you'll need to do a thing to get an upgrade. Wow, this is super in-depth. At low item levels, it'll take 5 to 8 world quests to upgrade a piece of armor. Weapons are more expensive. Okay, makes sense. At medium eye levels, it'll take 3 to 5 mythic keystones to upgrade a piece of armor, depending on the key level in the armor slot. From 402 to 424? 5 mythic keystones? Or to upgrade it once? It's upgraded once, right? Yeah. Yeah, once. At higher item levels, which is heroic to mythic here, it can take upwards of 10 normal dungeons to get to upgrade an armor piece. At all levels, 3 raid bosses, or 2 if they're end bosses, will get you enough flintstones to upgrade a piece of gear from that tier. This is just fine. This is just rewarding you for playing the game. And if these numbers are too stingy, they can adjust them, but that doesn't seem bad, right? Who's doing normal dungeons? Yeah, true. Frequently asked questions. What if I get something in a raid and then trade it? Can I roll need on weapons I can't use now just to make upgrades cheaper? When determining redundancy, only soulbound equipment on your character use counts, okay? Is Mythic Plus score going away? No. Under the Valor upgrade system, your Mythic Plus score is used to qualify your character for higher levels of Valor upgrades and a series of achievements. With this new upgrade system, Mythic Plus score won't be used to qualify for upgrade levels, but the score will be tracked for those achievements. And after a key, if anyone in the group has their score go up, you'll get bonus flight stones just like bonus Valor. Interesting. So I guess the whole idea of... I guess your alts don't really need score to upgrade. So what's the point of Mythic Plus score now? Gets you invited to groups, tracks your progression? Clout? Yeah, huge clout. Is Valor going away? Yes, the system is more expansive. Got it. Why isn't PvP gear included? Well, I mean, it's obvious why it's not included. Where will I go to upgrade my gear with this new system? Any item upgrade vendor will help you out. I'm a Fury Warrior. I was looking at a weapon upgrade section. I can't find the part that makes me sad to wield two two-handed weapons. Because of the way redundancy for two-handed works, Fury Warriors get a unique benefit. Upgrading a single two-handed weapon makes the same upgrade for the other weapon cost half the usual amount of flight stones and no crests. We forgot to add a part that would make you sad. Please forgive us. Damn, mic drop. People were already pre-complaining. He made up a pre-complain and then owned him. Get destroyed, imaginary Fury Warrior. What about Primal Storm Gear and 10.0.7's Onyx Amulet? This new upgrade system is specifically for Season 2. Got it. Easy answer. What if players don't like the system? Can we get rid of it after Dragonflight Season 2 ends? Yeah, maybe. A lot of what goes into this seems objectively better than what we have. I doubt this will be worse than Valor. I mean, it's just straight up better Valor. It's just better Valor. So, I doubt it'll go away, but that's fine that they're open to that if it's bad. You should always be open to removing things that are bad or working on them. What if players like the system? Can we keep it past Dragonflight Season 2? Maybe. Dude, they're like experimenting in the middle of the expansion. Blizzard's actually on one. This is very different. As always, we look forward to hearing your feedback. While the system is still being built, not all sources of crests and flight stones will be fully available during early PTR testing. Things will be changing often as the system becomes fully implemented as we respond to your feedback. Make sure to check out the new system on PTR and let us know what you think. All right, big departure from what I thought we were going to be talking about today. And I have some more, not like news on loot, but this is Pog, and there's some even more Pog shit coming. Specifically in regards to the way that looting works next patch when it is expanded upon. It's fucking just somewhere around the levels of Catalyst and Tier and things like that. There's some very, very, very banger shit coming for sure. So now we need to get into a couple other topics. So I guess is the rest of the information all from interviews? Someone sent me this picture and said, "Smell you later. This is a good one for the starting soon screen." What the fuck? That's what you made me check Discord for? All right.
I've got news.
26 minutes. Does he have sections? No. Okay, I guess we'll just watch all of it. We're going to skip almost all of the lore-related stuff just ahead of time.
One thing that this expansion introduced as well was the idea of the Renown tracks as replacements for the major reputations, just having the friendly, exalted.
I want to ask you guys about this. I have not done rep farming in multiple years. And I have not done Renown farming in this expansion or in Shadowlands, really, outside of whenever it was necessary for player power. How does it feel as a player to have Renown kind of replace reputation in that way? Is it better? Like, is the gameplay loop of farming rep better and feel more rewarding, or is it worse? I'm seeing a strong, slightly better, but pretty much the same, basically. There's a lot of 100% betters. There's a lot of I don't see a lot of it's worse. I mean, you're always going to have like people just be contrarians, but I don't mind it same and it's really good. So it's probably like pretty good.
Honored levels. Are there going to be new Renown levels for the existing 4 factions? Is that a system that's getting expanded upon?
No, not that I can remember. No plans to expand the existing Renown tracks that I can think of, but there will be a new Renown track that you'll be introduced to with the Niffin, who are kind of the like mole people of the Zarelek
Wait,
Cavern,
my camera's over them.
Look at them. We'll meet them very early on and be introduced to a system like that for them. But yeah, I mean,
those
Steve
guys are
mentioned
cool.
this, but we do want to make sure that Zarelek Cavern feels additive, right? It's not something that is replacing all of the content in the Outer World that people have been experiencing. Like, that was something we heard some feedback on earlier on, like, these cooking events and all these fun fishing events that feel very social and public. We are actually going to be updating a lot of those to be still relevant in Season 2, so their item level rewards will be increased there, so that this feels like Zarelek is something that you're experiencing alongside a lot of these core Dragonflight zones that you've been experiencing for a while. And we really wanted to make sure that it feels cohesive, right? Like, even just traveling to Zarelek, there's actually multiple entrances to the zone as you fly around the Dragon Isles, where you'll be able to access it from multiple different zones, and making that feel like a cohesive experience. Like, there's a long old tunnel that you'll have a lot of fun dragon riding down and through, that you will traverse through to get to Zarelek Caverns from those upstairs, I guess we could call them, zones. No load screens or anything like that. It should feel like a very cohesive end-game experience.
Okay, speaking of keeping item levels current, there were a couple of systems with this patch that I'm curious how you were happy with the item level rewards of, such as the profession
good question
items. Is that something that we're going to continue, and we're going to upgrade existing ones into next patch? Are they going to be the same relative item level to more normal heroic mythic raid?
Absolutely. Overall, we're really, really happy with
the game was totally different. The fact that you could get profession gear being this relevant, even when they announced that this would be a thing, is still kind of hard to believe. I think they fumbled the bag a little bit with Lariat. I don't think it makes a lot of sense for them to have made one crafting item basically best in slot for every single class and spec. There's like a few that don't use it. I don't know. It just seems like everyone has that and then something else, where like it could have just had a lot more variety, I guess.
I imagine that was also something they did not intend. Just something to think about. Here it is.
More normal, heroic, mythic, rare.
Not only just public ones, but also
There
my
you
own guild. Like, it's not uncommon that I'll throw out a public one just to get something ASAP, and then I'll go take my infusion and ask a guildie to upgrade it later. So those are definitely things that we talked about and are really pleased with how those played out. So yeah, definitely expanding that into
We can look at the art. Yeah, that's fine.
And like you said, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but definitely keeping them relatively the same so that they are powerful. You will want some crafted items. Those are definitely things that, you know, when you get your spark for the week, you're going to be excited about what you can start to craft. And in terms of like upgrading the existing items, I believe that's the current plan. Not only are there cool new recipes to want to potentially pursue with your embellishments, but also existing ones come forward. So, you know.
Wow. Okay. So that's a lot of information that we were kind of wondering where that was going to go. I figured they would definitely add new recipes and basically add a bunch of new embellished items to like kind of keep professions fresh, you know, similar to them not wanting to use the same thing all expansion with other things. With professions, they just don't want you having that. Like, they're going to let you keep your lariat and just do they're going to allow you to get the new primal focus and make your lariat bigger to make it relevant with current eye levels. You don't have to like fresh craft a new one. You'll be able to keep that. However, they're going to bring new embellishment items to like make you want to play something else, which is great. I think that was like the big question of whether they were going to do that or not. But I do hope that they really incentivize people to not have lariat. I hope they make a lot of different powerful ones, because it's just so weird that necks drop from every single content type and absolutely no one uses them. It's just weird. It would be like if artifact weapons existed in Legion, but then they made weapons drop off of every boss. Like, what's the point? You know, you have like you're not using those this expansion, so like it just doesn't make sense. That needs to be addressed for sure.
If you love your lariat, you'll be able to upgrade that.
You love my lariat. Okay, another system that's coming in is the class set bonuses. Obviously, are continuing forward. Narratively, these ones are all going to be
narratives.
Black Dragonflight, you know, themed and stuff. I guess I have a couple of questions. First of all, how are you planning on topping the names of the set bonus, the items, and the names? You know, the flavor of the ones from the Vault of the Incarnates? Because I don't know how many more vocabulary words I can learn before we're out of the dictionary, right?
Thesaurus.com is a powerful tool, man. Yeah, actually, something that's really exciting about the new set bonuses that are coming with Aberrus is they've actually taken. Actually, did you get a chance to see like a picture of them?
Yeah, we saw all 12. Yeah,
so epic. And you know, when you look at those, it's not a coincidence.
They were generally well received. Yeah,
of some of the sets that you might have seen in previous expansions. You know, like we recognize that Aberrus, this laboratory is. You know, this is kind of the blueprint for places like Blackwing Descent and Blackwing Lair, right? Like this is what came first. So kind of revisiting that from, you know, a story perspective was really exciting for us to get the opportunity to kind of revisit some of those sets that are kind of fan favorites and really update them and refresh them, because it really felt like a great thematic hook there.
How about in terms of the mechanical complexity of those set bonuses? I know that at the start of the expansion, we had this new talent system. We have a lot of stuff going on, and so the set bonuses were purposefully kept toned down a little bit. Is that something that talent system is still here, so maybe it still needs to be a little bit toned down, or are we back to full power, you know, wacky stuff?
We are still, so definitely not.
I haven't heard his answer here yet, but just before he answers, I thought about this a lot in the last coming weeks because we were getting an answer on this soon. I hope they don't go too hard on tier bonuses. I said this before, we talked about this yesterday. I think right now in PvE, just forget PvP. In PvE, I think this is the most balanced the game has ever been across all three roles. I very confidently think that. I feel like if they start going super, super hard with tier again, I'm concerned that tier bonuses, when they're at their most powerful, like 20% swings, it can just upset the balance. They've spent so much time in 10.0.7 and 10.0.5, like balancing trees and class power at a better level than they've ever done before. They probably did more work on class tuning in the first 2-3 months of this expansion than they usually do, and usually over a year or a year and a half in a live game or an expansion. And they actually got classes pretty close. We did an exercise with this yesterday. There were so many viable options for doing like highest level keys. And even then, dungeons, raids are always way more balanced than dungeons. But even in dungeons, there are more good classes at each role than there really ever is that could realistically do the highest level of content. I think having tier sets where at their most powerful, I think there was like, I think Moonkins are around like 15 to 18%. Top of my head, it could be a little higher than that. Like Moonkins have a super powerful tier bonus. There's a couple other super powerful ones. Dude, 2 and 4 piece combined, when they're not simplified and less powerful, is like 15% is like, it's not the average, but like there's a lot more of them. And when classes get 5% and some get 15, it's really hard to tune that. And doing that every single patch is going to be really scary. So I'm going to hope that what they do here when he answers this is I hope that they're going to do more than they did in this last patch with tier, but I hope they don't go back to fully what they tried to use to do with their power level. I think like somewhere there. And also one thing, I don't know if he'll answer this, but I think a really good opportunity for them with tier bonuses has never presented itself before, but it has now. Multiple classes in their spec tree. Think of it right now, guys. Think of your spec tree. Can you think of 2 to 3 nodes on that tree that are either really, really weak or super boring, and you basically have to go through them to get something else, and you feel like there's basically no reason for it to be there, especially in the mid to bottom of the tree? I feel like certain tier bonuses, what tier bonuses more than anything else allow you to do is kind of mess with a class a little bit, mess with the way it plays, add some cool interactions to spells that exist. And in a way, it also can be used to solve classes' innate problems. So I'll use Boomkin as an example this tier. Moonkin without the tier bonus is miserable. Their damage is terrible, and their class actually plays worse. Windwalker, currently Rising Sunkick doesn't do near enough damage really in a single target scenario in Raid. And that's including the fact that your 4-piece right now makes every single Rising Sunkick you cast do like fucking way more. Is it 30%? Way more damage? Tier bonuses can be used to solve a problem, but sometimes their design is actually pretty decent. All I'm asking from Blizzard is, when you retire these tier sets, don't be afraid of taking really good 2 and 4 pieces and putting them in the expensive or expensive-ish area of the spec tree as options over things that are currently ignored or kind of basic. You are already using these tier bonuses to kind of mess around anyway. If you happen to stumble upon something good, it doesn't have to be retired with that tier bonus. And I don't think you should do this for every class and every raid. But if you run across a good one that increases the way you play your class, you should definitely turn that into a talent or just bake it into their gameplay. You should not have to rely on the next tier bonus for Moonkin to also fix the gameplay issue. You can just kind of have it be there anyway. So, like, for example, Preservation 4-piece with like the instacast Living Flames, that should just be part of the class. That doesn't, you know what I mean? Yeah, so, okay, let's see what the answer is.
Right.
Wacky stuff.
We are still, so definitely not, we're not to Sepulcher levels of set bonus, but yes, it's definitely dialed up a notch, right?
Fuck yeah. Stage 1, dialed up a notch, not Sepulcher tier. That's very, very good to hear.
But we do want to be very, what's the word I'm looking for here? Like intentional with how much complexity we're adding there, especially with the new talent system. Like its ability, like your set's ability to impact what talent build. Like we really want to be careful about saying like, okay, well, you got 4-piece. This is literally your only talent choices. If you deviate from this, you're doing it wrong.
No. He's exactly right. And people want that because in the best case scenarios, those tier bonuses have been awesome, right? Like HFC MM Hunter. But actually, for every set that changes the way you play, there are just as many ones that try to change the way you play and makes your gameplay less fun. So I actually am a fan more of current, because the new talent trees exist. If you're ever pigeonholing someone into a certain talent, that's kind of weird, or it can be weird. I mean, I think they're exactly right. But at the same time, like stepping out of your comfort zone with those and taking a risk can also be something that can stick with the class forever, like what I was just talking about. But I could definitely see it being bad.
I want to be careful with how much interaction those sets have. And how much it's impacting your talents. But definitely, I would say it's been dialed up a notch, as well as kind of some of the tuning targets have been increased as well, just to really make sure that, like, okay, you're going to replace your previous set bonus with these because this set bonus is tuning targets a little bit higher as well.
There were these 2 very rare rings in Vault of the Incarnates that sort of had this bond between Aeronog and Broodkeeper. In general, these very rare items were really impactful, really powerful. They had this item level bump associated with them. They had this extreme rarity attached to them. Is that something that you're happy with? Is that something that we can expect to see very rare items in Aberrus in a similar way?
Yeah, totally. So I guess the 2 parts.
Okay, I just want to spit on this real quick. I think it should stay, and I hope it stays. But I hope Blizzard comes up with a good solution to a problem, and I don't know what it is. Here's the problem. Killing Aranog and Primal Council this late into a patch has never been more exciting and has mattered more. And every time it dies, you fucking look at the loot and you're about ready to get a fucking dopamine hit if it drops. That is cool. There's a couple of things about that are not cool. The fact that while, yes, killing Primal Council and Aranog has never felt better, killing Taros, Senarth has never felt worse. Going from best in slot god tier gear to killing bosses where you legitimately are doing them and there's nothing from these bosses you possibly want, that feels horrific. And a lot of people, what they've done is they've only done 2 out of 8 mythics, and there's no reason to actually progress farther than that because like you're just ruining your vault almost. You're adding items to your vault that gives you less of a chance to get the ring or an icon. You guys want to know a crazy stat? As THD said, we've killed Broodkeeper 50 times, and that ring has not dropped once in any of our raids. It has not dropped a single time. THD has not seen it in a vault across 6 characters. My only issue really is, I don't know, just some way to target them at least late in a patch would be really nice. And that's just speaking for us, but I feel like a lot of other people, even a normal version of these things early would have felt really good. And while it does feel nice to have very rare items, I just feel like off of the bosses they're on, it just something about it just isn't right. The solution of adding very rare items to every boss kind of compounds one of those issues, and removing the very rare items, I think, removes a lot of cool loot possibilities in the game. So I don't know the answer, and it's going to be interesting to hear where Blizzard decides to go with it. Also, small side note, not a very rare item thing, but make the trinkets off the last boss something that people actually want to kill the boss and get. It's the fucking end boss. It's the highest eye level gear. The trinkets way too often are bad in the last like 3 to 4 years of WoW. It should always be something that people want to get. Anyways, unmuting.
So that one is just itemization's role and ability to tell stories is always really exciting. Like I love when the rewards team has the opportunity to really plant little seeds like that. I also love, every week, one of the rings drops that the Tuskar want, and someone's like dibs, and I'm like, okay. But I just love those opportunities to tell stories with the rewards in the game and the items. But in terms of the system of, those different tiers of rewards, not only I would say, like you mentioned, there's kind of those like more rare items like the Drakthir staff. Those rings were also really
well. The Drakthir staff isn't rare, right? Yeah, Broodkeeper has like 3 items that are turbo good, but only one of them is rare.
really exciting. The bow, the Razagath bow, which there was a big forum post recently. Those are, we think, really
guys. Imagine the dub for the hunter in my alt guild. We killed Mythic Razagath in my alt guild, busy with your dad last Monday, and we decided to just fucking run it back next tier but not do farm because like who the fuck wants to do farm. And we one shot the bow on our first kill. We just got a bow, so the hunter just fucking made out like a bandit.
have been successful, right? Like they give you kind of that opportunity to have that item that you're really excited to see week over week, and gives you that kind of stretch goal, and also has some impact on maybe what your choices in your Great Vault are. So we definitely think that those have been successful, as well as having that more granular tiers of just rewards as you progress through the raid as well. We really felt like that did a great job of more accurately corresponding to the level of let's just say difficulty, right? Like okay, we know the end boss is harder, let's give it a big bump. We know the the bosses that are like wing bosses are more difficult, let's give them a bump. So that's definitely something that we're carrying forward into Aberrus.
But also it needs to change based on the boss that it's on too. So it's not a surprise that the Broodkeeper ring and the Hunter bow are much harder to get than Primal Council and Aranog. Primal Council and Aranog on Mythic drop 4 items that can all be the trinket or the ring. Broodkeeper and Razagath can only drop 2 items that are not tier, and it can be the ring or the bow. It's, I mean, at the very best argument, it is half. It's twice as hard to get those items because you have half as many chances for it to drop outside of your vault, of course. That needs to be looked at in some way as well. Like the ones off the last bosses, if tier is still going to drop in the same way, then it needs to be changed a little bit.
Okay, in 10.0.5, we have this Druid minor rework to the talent tree. 10.0.7, Paladins getting a moderate ret-focused set of changes?
Oh, they're getting a ton of
Are
changes.
there any classes that
It's
are
not
looking
moderate.
at getting something of that size in 10.1, or are talent changes of that size mostly being saved for these minor patches to let the other content come in the major patches?
Yeah, there's definitely changes that are going to be happening with Embers of Neltharion that are more significant on the class side of things. Like you mentioned,
That's really interesting because the changes in 10.0.5 and 10.0.7 were majorly significant, like huge. Which means if they don't consider that significant, they're going to do some shit in 10.1.
Paladin rework was pretty substantial in 10.07. We do try to be careful about, how much change we make there. At a certain point, we need to be really careful about kind of the integrity of the seasons. Are we going to blow up the leaderboard by making some of these changes? So we do try to be really considerate with that. Whereas a seasonal rollover is a bit of a larger reset. So it definitely affords us opportunities to make some more significant changes, especially where you might be moving things around the talent tree. In terms of like a large rework, I would say probably Shadow Priest is getting a pretty significant amount of work done in the Embers of Neltharion update.
Dude, how many times has that class been reworked? I mean, it probably needs it, though. I mean, it still sounds like, from the beginning of this expansion, regardless of Shadow Priest's current power level, I think for everyone who plays that class or paid attention to the discourse surrounding the beginning of the season, beginning of the expansion, they were in the middle of redesigning Shadow Priest via their talent tree, and they straight up ran out of time, and it was unfinished. It's clearly unfinished. They've given it some band-aids, they've buffed the fuck out of a few talents, but it's clearly not, it doesn't have a full vision of what it wants to be. It's just kind of a lot of stuff thrown together. Maybe a big reason for that is they've reworked it like 3 times in the last couple expansions. But I think it is probably, if you forget, I've heard a lot of people be like, do it to Ellie. Like, yeah, Ellie's weaker currently, but like Ellie has like kind of an identity. They do some things well, and like they're designed a certain way that's different. But Shadow Priest is like fucking weird. So I think it's probably the class that maybe needs the most work there, thinking about it. So yeah, I think it's good.
I joke with the team, like, someday we'll get through a whole expansion without reworking Shadow. But that's always one of those elements that we get a lot of feedback on and want to make some significant changes to. So people definitely see a lot of this stuff.
Shadow Priest needs more work than Survival Hunter. Honestly, no. Hopefully I'm not the only one here that's under the impression that like Survival is not given the same attention that Shadow Priest is. Like Survival is like this, it just doesn't matter. Like they don't care. A lot of players don't care.
As soon as
it's true, dude. Like you can tell in just the way
the PTR comes out this upcoming week. A lot of these class changes have been things that we've talked about, and when we talk about, hey, is this appropriate for 10.05, we might say like, no, that's really something that needs to exist on a seasonal boundary. Let's make some changes in 10.1, not in 10.07 or whatever it might be. So there will be significant class changes in 10.1, and that is really consistent with the philosophy that we've tried to communicate, where talents is just rebuilding a strong foundation that we can continue to iterate and invest in for the future. And Embers.
Dude, it's so funny. Wait, so many people in chat here think Shadow's in a good spot because it's strong. Well, of course. I mean, there's obviously a lot of people who care a lot about WoW, that how much damage something is doing is the only thing that matters, right? But that can be fixed like pretty quickly, right? In the grand scheme of things, it's more about like gameplay. I guess if you're a Shadow Priest, you are a bit worried. You're like, damn, I feel like our class should feel a little bit better than this, and our talents should be more of a decision. And this idle stuff at the bottom of our tree could just make way more sense. But man, I'm kind of scared they're going to rework us, because currently we're strong, and what if they rework us and we're dog shit? It's a realistic concern. Like Shadow Priest is in one of the best spots it's been right now. You know what Shadow Priest feels like right now? Feels like how good Shadow Priest was at season 1 of Shadowlands. You guys remember how good Shadow Priest was? They were literally cranking everyone on raid bosses, and they just got destroyed before Sanctum. But if you want to be happy about a class, I would want to be in a place where you're really happy about the gameplay and the tools you bring and the type of damage or healing you do or things like that, rather than your current tuning based on an overtuned talent or like a specific part of your kit being super strong. Like a preservation evoker, right? Like everyone wants to be preservation evokers. I don't know exactly how they're going to end up tuning that class at any point, but it's always going to have that much sauce. And you can't tune to give it extra sauce. You just have it or you don't, right? And I feel like Shadow Priest doesn't fit a lot of niches currently. They do a lot of really good damage and really efficient talent builds, but I feel like they could definitely be a more like fully thought out realized class. I think people are just forgetting that they like redesigned them with their entire capstone. Their entire capstone tree for Shadow is just a complete mess. And regardless of what's strong, it's not interesting, and a lot of that stuff is under-realized and was never implemented properly. They clearly ran out of time.
There.
All right, final question. Patch release date. Obviously, we know 10.0.7 is coming kind of soon. Now, on June 6th, there's another game coming out that I and several of my friends intend to play quite a bit of, where we venture into hell, slay some demons, that kind of stuff. Is that something that's going to be mutually exclusive with playing all the Embers and Eltharion content as well, or is there a plan to let me do both of those?
Oh, so they did this interview pre-recorded. They released it today. It was under embargo until today, but then they announced the date today, right? So, I mean, maybe they'll do it in the interview.
To draw us into answering a question about a date that we aren't talking about yet.
Yeah.
But,
Wait, did they not? I thought it was assumed. Oh, I thought they did announce the date.
Certainly, we are aware of our fellow colleagues on other teams and their upcoming releases, and that's definitely something we will be keeping in mind when it comes to when we put out Embers of Neltharion.
So if they haven't announced the date, no, this is not a Max knows thing. No, I do not know. I have a general idea. Like, basically, word on the street was it was late May, early June. I heard late May a while. I'll just be fully transparent. This is not like hidden leaking stuff. I heard it was late May a while ago, and then the most recent thing I heard was it was early June, which is very scary. I'm glad they're cognizant of that. I hope they realize that most of WoW's player base and is going to try Diablo 4 just straight up. And not even just for the race. People just be like, oh, don't release. Like, I just mean for everybody. Like, if they release this season 2 in mid-May and Diablo is 3 to 4 weeks away, when Diablo comes out, it is going to ravage that season. I mean, it's going to be not the same level, but similar to like when Classic WoW first came out. Like 9.1 was a dog shit patch, or 8 whatever it was. Like, people were over BFA at that point when Classic came out, but it just ravaged the game. Like a lot of people are gonna. Now, I don't know if Diablo's gonna be great. That's a story for another day. But when it comes out, I would bet a large portion of WoW players would play it. So, definitely an interesting topic.
I don't have anything specific to
Even if it means the patch comes out late, honestly, I would. God, I would hate to say, like, just for me personally, this is just my opinion. I'm gonna play the fuck out of D4. I'd like a nice 2 weeks in D4 before I have to play WoW. I guess the alternative for me is they could do the Race World first in mid-May, and then we're done with the race, and then we can just play Diablo. That's good for me, but I feel like that's bad for the most WoW players. Like, I feel like most WoW players will be really annoyed by that, maybe. I don't fucking know. Maybe there's no good way around it. Like, the only good time to have Diablo 4 come out in a WoW season is, like, right now. You know what I mean? Like if Diablo 4 came out this Friday or something, like, it would have zero. Everyone's like, we've reached the point of the WoW season where it's pretty repetitive, and a lot of people still play it, but it's like, you could take a couple weeks off kind of thing.
tell you in that regard today.
Other than I'm excited about Diablo 4 as well.
Yes. We all want to kill demons too, so we're ready to go.
All right. Well, thank you both very much for your time. It was great to.
Okay, so they didn't talk about. So what of the things that were announced so far have we not actually discussed? I know one of them is the simultaneous release, and I want that to be the last thing I talk about because that's gonna dampen the mood a bit, I think. Oh, is it? Oh, Wowhead participated. Oh, so they're interviewing Morgan and they're putting Morgan and Steve to work. All right, so this is a banger interview then. Okay, here we go. Affixes in Dragonflight Season 2. Jez from Windows Central. Are there any thoughts on tweaking affixes in Season 2, especially with less popular affixes? For example, in our guild, whenever it's Tyrannical Week, people groan and are not super happy about it. All right, let's get saucy. Morgan, tons of conversations around affixes. I actually love Tyrannical. Maybe I'm the weird one, but I love Tyrannical. Typically, healers like Tyrannical because it turns bosses into something they actually have to heal. Where like DPS, you just want to be doing trash more than bosses. The way that I would say the big difference between Fortified and Tyrannical for me is this. The ideal length for a boss in a Mythic Plus dungeon is achieved by the Fortified key. Tyrannical, you can think of it in a lot of different ways, but for me, the easiest way to look at it is tyrannical makes it feel like you're doing bosses longer than you should. It's just that simple. You've done every mechanic twice now. I get the point. Why are we doing this for another 2 minutes? It's just longer than it should be. Also, the other issue with tyrannical, I feel like with trash feels too short in tyrannical. The ideal trash pull in tyrannical is too short, and the correct trash duration on fortified is just feels right. So that's why, to me, fortified feels better than tyrannical, because fortified achieves the ideal length of a boss and trash, and tyrannical, the trash is too short and the bosses are too long. And I think you just feel that through the whole dungeon. That's why I dislike tyrannical. So in terms of philosophy of affixes, in particular for Season 2, we've taken a big step back there and are looking at it holistically. One major change we're making is we're not going to have a level 10, that is to say the seasonal affix like Thundering. There won't be a replacement for Thundering, and Thundering is being retired. So Thundering being retired is also not a throwaway part of the sentence, because some people's ideas are maybe you rotate some of the old seasonals as the second affix, which they'll talk about they're reworking later. So affixes have been a huge topic of conversation this expansion, because this is now the fourth expansion of Mythic Plus, and we've had most of the same affixes the whole time. They've been reworked a little bit, some have been removed, and it just seems like affixes are stale. Like, it's just not really adding a lot to there needs innovation, and that's what they're going to try to do, as they're going to explain later. However, I don't really understand removing the seasonal affix. Why I understand it is the reason that seasonal affixes were ever made in the first place is because in old Mythic Plus expansions, you had the same dungeons for the 2 years. So seasonal affixes were a way to make the dungeons feel different every season, right? So now that dungeons change every season, the whole idea for why they made seasonal affixes in the first place does not exist. So that is an argument for removing them, and that makes sense. What they said at the beginning of the expansion is, well, we're probably going to keep it, but maybe we'll make it a little bit toned down. And then Thundering just turbo was not turned down, but that was the idea. I'm a little opposed to this for one reason. And I understand that they have not had a high success rate on seasonal affixes. There have been 9 of them now, and only 2 of them have been amazing, but they were amazing. Awakened and Encrypted were the only 2 affixes to positively affect Mythic Plus, and they made the game mode just straight up better by existing. If you were to add Encrypted into any single dungeon season, it would have been better than whatever was there instead of that. It was fucking insane. Yes, I know some people are fans of Reaping. I know some people are fans of Prideful. Those are fine, I guess, just because most of them did Big Damn. But I think any seasonal affix that required you to move your routing around 20% of the dungeon, I think lowered your creativity by a ton, and that was way too big of a drawback to make up for the advantages. And let's be real, guys. Reaping wasn't really an insane affix. I liked Reaping. You want to know why? Because I like doing Big Damn, and I like a bunch of ads coming in and doing a ton of damage. But there was not a lot to that affix. It was just whatever, man. Every now and then you just did a lot more damage because you pulled a bunch more ads in, which is pretty telling, because that's pretty much what people want to do. They just want to pull big and own shit, and they don't want everything to have 100 million mechanics. Like, I understand, but let's just keep it, just for the sake of argument, let's keep it simple. Reaping was good. I think Prideful had a lot more issues than Reaping, but I think both of them had a lot of issues there, but that's not what this conversation's about. I would say Awakened and Encrypted both hard clear those 2 affixes and every other affix, and it's not close. They were fucking unbelievable. And I think when your affix has potential like that, I struggle to see you removing the thought process that got you to that point in general. I would love for them to continue making seasonal affixes, because even if they're mid, sometimes they're like that, and that is way too good. Even Thundering. People really do not like Thundering. I think they've made one huge mistake on Thundering, and it's the fact that it fucking wipes you if it goes off. You have 3 people get stunned and die. Bro, if Thundering doesn't stun you, doesn't wipe you, or just does like 30% of your health when you miss it, bro, people don't hate Thundering. It's a little annoying to time it. Sometimes it feels bad to have a damage buff completely wasted. Sometimes it feels great because all your cooldowns come up and you fucking own. But it's way too punishing. It wasn't good enough, for sure. But man, if they're removing the thing from dungeons that at one point had the thoughts behind making Encrypted and making Awakened, removing that really, really sucks. So I do understand them removing seasonals because it doesn't really make sense when the dungeons are changing all the time. You can kind of just have the dungeons be that level of interesting, and you can make the dungeons a little bit more creative then to make up for it. My only take is find a way to incorporate encrypted into every dungeon. This might be a fucking clown dog shit take, but I feel like if encrypted is just part of Mythic Plus forever, like it's literally in every dungeon set for the rest of time, then like Mythic Plus is just better. And I think there's even things you could relate this to. So Mythic Plus was derived from rifts in Diablo, greater rifts in Diablo. One thing that greater rifts in Diablo have is they have these pylons and they have these shrines that increase your damage and power throughout every rift you ever do. I think encrypted can act just like that, where basically it's the same idea for where Mythic Plus was originated. And as you go, and it doesn't have to necessarily be the like 3 motes or whatever you kill. It can look different. I just think the idea of the creativity of pulling that mob in with other things, the fact that you realistically would choose all 3 of them based on the different situation, I just feel like it adds so much to the mode that I would like to see them workshop a way to make something like that always exist. Because that's really what you're missing from seasonal affixes, is something that good being made, and they already made it. That's my only take on it. But continuing the conversation here. Seasonal affixes were created as an idea back in BFA where we had the same dungeon pool. We'd add 1 or 2 dungeons here and there, but you playing the same dungeons for years. We talked about this. We added those seasonals to solve the problems of feeling like the dungeons were solved. That way, specific. Going into Dragonflight, we're like, well, we don't need to solve that problem anymore, but maybe there's a way of the amount of gameplay that feels like a persistent element of the dungeon. But ultimately, we've heard a lot of feedback around complexity. Like, how much stuff do I have to know to do and what's going on and how many wrenches you're going to throw at me, and not even dodgeballs, but wrenches we're throwing at you. You have to dodge. Definitely taking a really close look. Yeah, but, dude, I really feel like that's just because Thundering kills you. There's no reason that Thundering should kill you. Yes, you're adding complexity to a bunch of new dungeon pools. Yes, you could just remove Thundering and make the dungeons a little bit more challenging or more involved, whatever, or not. All of it. I get it. I'm just saying, I feel like the feedback they would be getting is not super negative if they just made it so Thundering didn't fucking wipe you when you failed it. I don't know. But there's also so many other issues to Thundering. I'm not saying it would be perfect without it, but yeah, hopefully you get that. Then we're taking a closer look at the level 7 bucket. And how much opportunity there is for counterplay. How much of that is making your healer's life harder versus how much of that is there an opportunity where if I play really well, I can negate this affix. So we're definitely taking a look at the whole level 7 bucket. So really more along the lines of an affix refresh for that bucket as well as no level 10 affix. Let me read the last bit before I talk about this. On top of that, trust us, we've heard the feedback around, hey, when Season 2 rolls around, you've done Brackenhide Mythic 0 for the first week. It was pretty hard, so definitely taking a close look at individual dungeons and definitely cutting some things that are existing today in Mythic 0 and asking, once affixes are in the mix, do you really need this pull to have 3 creatures? Forget affixes. No. And then we have to ask ourselves, once affixes are in the mix, do you really need to have this pull to have 3 creatures that all need a kick rotation? Just remove affixes from that entirely. Look at every pull without affixes at all and just be like, is this too much? Because it's been going more and more over time, and I think the general community sentiment is it is not appreciated that just over time there's been gradually more and more mechanics per every fucking mob you pull in dungeons. And it's possible that it shouldn't be 0, right? It's actually very possible, but it should be somewhere in the middle of where we are now and where we came from, right? I hope they look at that. I would not like affixes. Let's see, or something like that. Very much we've been discussing that. So yeah, make the mobs less like that. And yeah, Brackenhide's gonna be a wild ride. It's like Motherlode if every mob in the beginning of Motherlode was a raid boss with the amount of mob count that's in that dungeon as well. So I'm sure they'll tune it down a bit, like we said earlier. All right, here we go. This is pretty hype. Cross-faction guilds in 10.1. Cross-faction guilds seem to be indicated as coming in patch 10.1. Is that real? That is real. That will be on the PTR. The PTR is coming later this week. I believe that will be available day 1 on the PTR. We are quite excited about that, and it's just aligned with some of the philosophies that we've been discussing about cross-faction. We opened up cross-faction parties. My raid group is cross-faction raid group, and you could know the conversation of, gosh, would it be neat to have these people in my guild? We are trying to be really considerate with those changes, and we're watching the steps as we're making changes there because we recognize the impact that has on not just our community, but the game itself. Factions, Alliance, and Horde are a huge part of World of Warcraft, even if I can play with people of the other faction. Yeah, got it. I mean, they said from the very beginning they were going to make cross-faction guilds once it was obvious how popular this was. It's just that it was a technical limitation, so it just seems like they're doing it here. I'm surprised they're doing it this early. I thought it was going to be later in the expansion, honestly. Oh, and one thing I forgot to talk about here. They mentioned that they're looking at the level 7 bucket and they're reworking it. What is the level 7 bucket? What are the level 7 affixes? Does anyone know off the top of your head? It is Grievous, Storming, Quaking, Explosive. So not bolstering. Altogether, it's a dub. All affixes in general need some work. So the fact that even if they're saying, hey, we're going to look at half of these at a time, that's still better. Blizzard obviously realizes the amount of discourse that's happened around affixes. So, and maybe there's another post where they elaborate a little bit more on that. Let's keep going. The new Zarelek Caverns have a bunch of features like snail riding, 3 biomes, and more activity with the Niffin. What was the process on deciding the new zones, the features, and the gameplay? Skip. Can you tell us anything about the Revival Catalyst in 10.1? It will still be there, although we've had a lot of conversation around player expectations around their set bonuses. Once upon a time back in Legion when you had sets, they were looked as more as aspirational, like it was the goal that would take a while to pursue and achieve. More and more we've seen with the community, especially with how transformative and impactful your sets can be, it's starting to feel a lot like a chase goal and more something that I am not complete without this thing. Correct. I mean, definitely, yeah. Dude, imagine being a Moonkin at the beginning of this expansion and you don't have 4-set and someone else does. You feel incomplete. You feel like you are not allowed to play your class yet. That is absolutely a feeling, and it is real, and it is not made up. There is a kind of expectation around it, so we are making some changes. Not exactly around the Revival Catalyst, but we've definitely discussed ways that we can add more determinism and bad luck protection in people's acquisition of their tier set bonuses. Here it is. I believe we might even have a blog coming out sometimes in the next few days or later in the week that discusses this exact topic, so there's definitely been conversations around this. And we're always looking to evolve based on player feedback, and this is one of those areas that has been discussed a lot. Okay, so you guys will know soon, but they're not moving up the Revival Catalyst, as they're saying here, but they are doing a lot in the ways of benefiting your acquisition of tier on a player-by-player basis. And something they also did, do you guys know the one thing they did this expansion different from Season 3? As far as your ability to acquire tier before the Catalyst comes out? Actually, see if anyone noticed it. Vaults can always give it. I think it was that way before. Well, you're on the right track. Tier comes out of your vault way more. Like, fuck it, it's turbo buffed. I don't know by how much. Loot in this game is super weird, but the amount of tier you get from your vault is buffed insane from what it used to be, with like a comparison to Season 3 at least. So that was what they did this patch. But next patch, it'll definitely have a lot more options there, which they will. It says, he even says here that there will be a post coming out, it seems like later this week. All raid difficulties released at the same time. Jeremy from Wowhead. The raid will be simultaneously released again. You did that for the first time in Season 1. Did you like it so much that you decided to do it again, or was there a different reasoning for it? I'm just going to read this whole thing, and then you all are just going to have to let me cook for a bit. When we were talking about the Dragonflight release, a lot of our conversations about the simultaneous release was about the proximity to the holiday and our abilities to support the raid launch. Ultimately, after we saw how that played out, we had a lot of discussions about it. What were the pros, what were the cons, and what did we like, and what did we dislike? And we really felt like for a broader audience, it was such a great experience to not have that frankly awkward week where the raids were open but Mythic isn't open. So if you're a Mythic Plus player, what level do I need to run? That never needed to exist with the previous thing. We'll get into that in a bit. There's an awkwardness that would happen when we had the season launch, but not really launch. So having that alignment around the season launching felt like a great experience for the broadest audience. Okay? And the problems that it did create for us, which were, there were definitely some problems it caused, felt like solvable problems. We'll get into that in a bit. Things that we could find solutions for, things that we could take our learnings from Season 1 and apply to Season 2, and look to execute that even better this time. Ultimately, it just felt like this was the best experience for the largest audience, and I wanted to move forward again. Okay, so I think one of the biggest issues with this is who is benefited by them doing these 2 weeks at the same time. As a heroic player, if you're doing heroic in a heroic week or doing heroic when Mythic comes out, you have no difference whatsoever. The big one is obviously Mythic Plus. Previously, Mythic Plus was capped to like a +6 during 1 week, which admittedly was very fucking weird, just like they said. And more importantly, should have never existed. It has never made sense that has existed. In fact, the only real argument as to why that exists is, and they've even said this in an interview in the past, is so we, the Race World First Guilds, don't do a ton of Mythic Plus before we do our splits to like farm extra heroic gear before the raid. Back when it was personal loot, so you could get gear at the personal loot level to be able to trade it. They used to have a lot of rhetoric and interviews about doing that. And as you guys know, maybe some of you guys are new to the stream, I never make an argument that things should be changed to only benefit us if it hurts other people, or really that the Race World First should have any idea with game design at all. Most of the positive reception they've received to putting the 2 Mythic raids at the same point has been revolved around Mythic Plusers not having a cap to their gear in week 1, which everyone likes. And I would argue, whether if they have simultaneous releases or Heroic and then Mythic, there is no reason that you would not have the unbuffed Mythic Plus thing in the season that is not released simultaneously. The Heroic week. You'd be doing so many fucking splits, you would never have a single second. If their concern is us, you would never have a single second to farm Mythic Plus before you go into raid. After you pick your main, you'd be able to farm Mythic Plus just like you would on a normal season, but you're not, like, it's literally no different. It never needs to exist, and people are using that as a reason to say that simultaneous release should happen. But what I'm saying is, in a non-simultaneous release, it should also happen that Mythic Plus is the way it was this time. So then you have to ask, okay, if they do a non-simultaneous release, who is positively affected by releasing it all at the same time? It's not Mythic Plusers, because it can be exactly the same. No reason it can't be. It's just, anyone who steps foot into Mythic in this first week is going to have a worse experience than if they did it with 1 week ahead of time. And that's not just including the level of balance and tuning and quality of the bosses, but it's also how good and bad your classes are. Blizzard for a long time has needed Heroic Week to tune their bosses. This raid is an insane point of evidence for that. And they need it to have more public information to tune classes, especially with new tier bonuses and stuff. Now, I will acknowledge that I think whether the raids are simultaneously released versus not simultaneously released will affect most people the same. It won't really affect people at all. For most people, I don't think it really matters. But it's fucking awful for us. And I don't think it's awful for us and, oh, it should be awful for you, or it can be awful for you because it's better for everyone else. I don't see a better for everyone else. I think it just makes what we're doing infinitely worse. And you're right. Maybe we're not a lot of people. We're almost no one in the game, so we shouldn't even be considered. I make this argument all the time. But that doesn't mean it doesn't fucking suck, though, man. That last raid was one of the most unfun experiences I've ever had. Win or lose, Echo has exactly the same take. This is not something that has happened forever. I think Atlas put it best on Twitter. This is not minor fixes and changes that have happened in previous raids. Those are completely expected. They happen all the time. What happens now in the last 2 raids, man, is we run into bosses that cannot be progressed. You run your fucking head into them, and then they nerf them, and it's a joke. It's not like they nerf them to a reasonable level, and then you continue progressing. You run against something impossible, it's nerfed, it dies. It's anti-fun. I think a lot of people don't know why we do stuff like this. Why do we level 10 of the same class? Is it for money? Like no one's making a ton of money doing this shit. Like, it's not for money, it's for fun. You do this for fun. Win or lose, you do this for fun. It is genuinely, when it's at its best, which was, multiple raids in the past 3 to 4 years, besides specifically Sepulcher and this last one. You do it because you're just playing with your boys. A lot of the stuff that happens on stream is ignored. A lot of the stuff, we're just playing with your friends and doing a fun raid. That really fun raid you guys do, where you have linear progression from start to finish, does not happen for us anymore. For the last 2 raids, it's been over a year since the last raid where this was true in Sanctum. Where you go in, the bosses are all tuned correctly, and you can progress it linearly. Win or lose, it's a fucking blast. The last raid was fucking dog shit in that way. It was so anti-fun. And if you ask yourself why people are making 10 characters to do all this stuff, it's way less to win than it is to have fun. And the only reason we tolerate making fucking 1 million characters and having these crazy requirements and all of these non-fun things is just so we can do this one thing twice a year that's super fun. And that fun is going away. And it's going away fast. It's been 2 raids in a row. And I absolutely hope that I'm wrong. And that last raid was just a fluke and it had nothing to do with simultaneous release, and they'll tune this raid perfectly, and maybe that's what he's referring to here. The problems it did create for us, which he doesn't express exactly what those for. He sings there's fine solutions for. Maybe he's talking about the tuning or the class balance. Maybe they have that under control. We don't know until we see it. But all I'm saying is, if the race to world first involves you making 1 million fucking characters and having all this time requirement, and the only reason we used to do that was for fun, if it keeps being this level of dog shit when we do it, race to world first players are going to start dropping like flies, win or lose. It's already happened. People have pretty much cited the amount of work that goes into this, and there used to be a payoff. That payoff just isn't there anymore. And I don't know if it's like something that is dead and we haven't realized it yet, or if it's going through a couple of rough patches and it's going to get better. But there's so many examples of the past of them doing this properly, of releasing raids that are tuned properly from start to finish.
And I feel like so many people will make this a winning and losing thing. It's really not. There's supporting arguments from people winning and losing in this exact same direction. I do not have confidence that Blizzard will tune this raid to a level that is expected without Heroic Week. And I think Vault would give you any bit of evidence you could ever have there. I'll give you 4 bosses in a row, man. We did Dathia. A lot of people don't remember this because Echo was still doing splits, was not in the raid yet. We're on Dathia. They had to reduce that boss's health and also add a entire 5th ad. It was just not even there before. Boss was like, we were wiping at 15% with like crazy good pulls. They nerf it, instantly dies. You do Kurog, overtuned, nerf it, instantly dies. Broodkeeper's perfect for some reason. Razageth, every single phase had to be routinely nerfed. And in some cases, they nerfed it in half just for it to be possible. And then every single time you didn't feel like you were getting better. You just progressed, and then you hit a wall, and you couldn't do anything about it, and then it got nerfed, and you kept going. Oh god! And then the last boss, like Razageth's like a cool looking fight. It's a great fight on Heroic, but it was a failure on Mythic. Right? It was a failure. Like the hardest phase is at the beginning, and then the last phase can be killed in 5 pulls. Now, after they made the last phase the easiest part of the fight, very Stone Legion Generals-esque, right? I don't know. I've lost a ton of faith in this. I was really, really hoping to see that they did 2 separate weeks because I think they need it to properly tune this because of how hard it is to tune WoW, tune these raids, tune these classes, especially with a bunch of new tier bonuses. And I acknowledge that I and we are probably one of the only people who are affected by this, but I don't know of anyone that would be affected by them doing it the other way, assuming they uncap Mythic Plus in that other season like they should do regardless of whether it's a simultaneous release or not. But I think it's lowered the quality of their raids by a lot. And I know that only we deal with it. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if viewers have anything to do with it. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's not about the length of the raid or whatever. It's not about us killing it before Diablo. None of that shit. It is just, there's a lot that goes into preparing for the race that you have to do to compete. And you've always done it because the payoff was fun. It has not been fun. It's going down a direction of being way and way less fun. I don't know who the fuck is going to want to keep doing this if this is what raids are going forward. At all. So I'll get all my Dobby out. That's it. But if this raid is tuned like the last 2 were, which were in my opinion complete failures in that way, I don't know what the Race World First looks like in a very short amount of time. That's as long as the tier sets and doing splits during the raid is also solved by another week, but that's just a viewership thing. Like I'm not making an argument for viewership really, or the length of the raid. It's more of a fun factor. As long as there are tier sets, there will be splits during Mythic, but if there was a Heroic Week, there would be a lot less during the actual Mythic, so you would actually see guilds go into Mythic right away instead of do a couple days of splits. Does that make it less interesting? Yeah, I just don't think that should really factor into Blizzard's design. I just don't think without Heroic Week that they can tune Mythic properly for anyone who enters Mythic Week 1. And for anyone else who doesn't enter Mythic Week 1, the difference between simultaneous release and non-simultaneous does not affect you. It just strictly doesn't. Actually, it probably does. It's actually probably way less likely that there are heroic nerfs and changes that are needed because they're focusing on the Mythic version and during the race, which they pay very close attention to. But it's probably pretty minor. Max, are you worried about having another 9-boss raid? I don't think the number of bosses really matters at all. Like, if you have an 11 to 12 boss raid, it just means a couple more bosses are kind of throwaways. Like, making hard raid bosses and cool, interesting raid bosses is not easy, and the more bosses you add, the less chances, like, the more that the quality is kind of dispersed. I don't know if there's a raid boss amount. I guess it's kind of a similar question. I don't know if a raid boss amount actually matters. Let's see. UI updates in patch 10.1. Michael from MMO Champion, could you talk a little bit more about the UI updates that are coming 10.1 and what player feedback has been like? Dude, I will say, I was kind of hyped about the new Blizzard UI, and I think it's really good for the game just because their old one is so outdated. But I don't know, man, I just wonder how many people are actually affected by it. Like, people who play the game at a high level don't use the new UI because, like, there's just better add-ons than the new UI. There's still, like, some things it needs working on. And then I feel like newer players, not like brand new players, but players who don't really care too much about their performance, like, I feel like they almost thought that, like, the change was something they didn't want. It could just be better for sure. There's still, like, it's missing so many options. I would say, what do you guys think is the biggest thing that needs work with the default UI? I very strongly feel like it's nameplates. I feel like the default nameplates are absolutely tragic. Raid and party frames. I think raid and party frames actually have a lot of value to them. Emerson Ethereum will have some major updates that this is aligned with the journey. Let's see. So some of the areas you'll see improvements on, possibly in the PTR later this week, things like group management, raid frames, quest tracking, and how quests are played in the game. There are a lot of improvements to edit mode, which we know players have really enjoyed, but you know, very often we'll see feedback like, I wish I could do this thing in edit mode. So a lot of feedback about edit mode has been incorporated, like in edit mode plus. I feel like there's an updates to personal resource bars. I don't remember off the top of my head. Personal resource bars have higher fidelity. Yo, you gotta update the nameplates, man. It's gotta happen. Adding dragon riding to normal mounts. Oh. This is a great question. One of the things the community has really been asking about is they want their mounts to have dragon riding capabilities. Can you give some insights into the difficulty to process? I don't know if there's a lot of feedback about people wanting to use their mounts right now. I imagine there's a decent amount. I think the much greater problem is what happens when you get to a non-dragon-centric expansion, and it's been 2 years of people riding dragons. What happens to the 800 mounts they already have available in this game, right? In the next expansion. Can they go back to normal flying? Have you guys done normal flying recently? It's like undoable after dragon riding. It also makes all of the zones feel... You have to completely change your zone design. I feel like zone design is so positively affected by dragon riding. So how are they going to deal with this? I think it's so interesting. We've heard that feedback loud and clear, and I think it's a great idea. To your point, we're adding a new dragon riding mount. I forget the name of it. Yeah. In terms of applying dragon riding to pre-dragonfly mounts, yeah, there are definitely challenges there. I would say first and foremost that the animations required to make it work, like dragon riding rigs and models, there's a tremendous amount of time and effort to make that feel visceral and awesome. Oh, so there's a ton of effort that goes into making it feel as good as it is. We want to make sure we're hitting that quality bar if we ever do that on existing mounts. Okay, so they haven't even started yet. So it's definitely something we're heard feedback on. We've definitely asked that questions ourselves. What are the challenges? But there's nothing to announce other than cool new dragon riding mount. Dude, I think next expansion is going to be so weird when it comes to that. If they haven't even started working on that now, what is their fucking plan? Are we just going to ride dragons for the rest of WoW? Like, and just never use our old mounts again? That's kind of crazy to think about. It's going to be 11.0 thing? Yeah, but if it's been an 11.0 thing, they would already be working on it. Two teams work on WoW at any given point. The team that's working on the current expansion and the other team is working on the new one. That team maintains that next expansion, and this team would move on to work on the next one. They rotate with a lot of people who do both, but they have like two different groups working at any given time. But they wouldn't talk about that. Yeah, they wouldn't talk about it, but also they said if we ever do that on existing mounts. Yeah, I guess you're right. Certain items becoming mandatory for specs. Ooh, there are a lot of cool items, especially like the Elemental Lariat. Itemization is something we're talking about. We have frequent tuning updates. Yep. When it comes to items and rewards, it's often items stands above the rest. In terms of acquisitions, one of the things I'm excited for. Same trinket over and over again every season. Now we'll get new ones. You did mention the Lariat. Yes, this is what I wanted to read about. You'll be able to upgrade the things you bring with you, but of course there's a bunch of new things that you'll want to see. Class changes in patch 10.1. Are you able to share anything about the class changes coming to 10.1? Very soon people will see there's updates. We have Red Paladin. Okay, looks like we got out of all the fat ones.